Brother of the Third Degree by William Lincoln Garver. Chapter 1. Childhood. There is a principle impervious to all argument, an obstacle to all progress, which, if persisted in, cannot but condemn the mind to perpetual ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Paley. Accept nothing that is contrary to reason, and dismiss nothing as unreasonable without proper investigation. Buddha. My name is Alfonso Colono. I am a Mexican of unmixed Spanish lineage, though I was born in the city of Paris. I am an only son, but I possessed a beautiful sister, Esmeralda, who was 3 years my junior. My father, Ferdinand Colono, was a direct descendant of the Colonos of Granada, who traced their ancestry back to the Moorish era, and who were renowned throughout the Iberian Peninsula for their exceptional skill as physicians. My mother belonged to the noble Vesta family of Seville, who were likewise highly distinguished physicians. My parents first met during their student years in Paris. Following 10 years of the most refined and studious companionship, and after both had graduated with the highest honors, they were wed. I am the firstborn of that union. Subsequent to my birth, my parents relocated to the city of Mexico, where my paternal grandparents had settled early in the 19th century. There had always existed an enigma concerning their education, an enigma I did not comprehend until late in life. They were among the most learned individuals of their era, and, remarkably, they emerged from the very epicenter of materialistic thought deeply imbued with mystical concepts. Upon his return to Mexico, my father immediately commenced his medical practice, soon becoming renowned far and wide for his extraordinary success and skill. Indeed, his reputation grew to such an extent that it transcended the borders of Mexico, extending throughout the entire Western Hemisphere, and he was offered almost fabulous stipends by the governments of various South American states. All these offers he respectfully declined, remaining in the city to minister to the affluent and the impoverished alike, never turning away those of high or low station. Consequently, he was universally esteemed and beloved, exerting a powerful influence within both governmental circles and the populace at large. My mother, scarcely less erudite and highly accomplished in both art and music, possessed an influence equal to my father's. Yet, save on extraordinary occasions, she devoted the greater part of her time at home to the instruction of my sister and me, regarding it as her sacred duty to act as our tutor. Our home was exquisitely situated upon a hill in the suburbs of the city, a 2-story edifice with a classical stucco exterior and a spacious interior courtyard, beautifully paved with multicolored pebbles and rendered delightful by a sparkling fountain and tropical flora. Many years have elapsed since my mother sat there in the cool of the evening, pointing out and explaining to my sister and me the stellar constellations that shine so brilliantly in the cloudless skies of tropical climes. I still recall those evening discourses with the utmost clarity. She did not regard the starry hosts merely as luminous bodies destined to dispel the gloom of night. Rather, like her ancestors of the Moorish era, she believed them to be animate spheres, the abodes of deities and spirits, possessing a most intimate relationship with the children of the earth. Many years have passed, and numerous vicissitudes have crossed my path since those evening discourses and those bright, sunny days when my beautiful mother would escort Esmeralda and me to the neighboring mountain summit, fostering our appreciation for the beauties of nature as we gazed upon the placid mirror of the Gulf, and toward the distant, azure and misty mountains that encircled us. I still cherish the delightful lessons in geology and natural history we received during those excursions. for we found great joy in studying the many curious minerals, plants, and fauna discovered there. I still recall the tender light that shone from my mother's dark, luminous eyes as she admonished us to harm no living creature, reminding us that all life is sacred and divinely created, that even the smallest insects exist for a purpose, and that we might learn far more by observing them in life than by dissecting them in death. Following our frequent excursions to the mountain, even the birds seemed to discern that we differed from the generality of humankind, becoming gentle and familiar, alighting upon our shoulders and perching upon our hands. Even now, I can envision Esmeralda, her long, dark tresses fluttering in the breeze, laughing and conversing with the robin perched upon her hand. Alas, these recollections filled me with melancholy for many years. I loved my beautiful mother and sister with a pure and sacred affection, and I frequently wished myself a child once more, that I might relive the unalloyed happiness of those hours. Yet I now perceive that such yearning was unwise. You perceive, dear friends, what I have lost. Yet do you comprehend what I have gained? Great indeed were those joys, yet far greater are those that arise from the full unfolding of our spiritual natures. Furthermore, it is imprudent to dwell upon an unrecallable past, save in such study as may better guide our footsteps in the future. My father, though almost incessantly ministering to the infirm, never missed an opportunity to be at home, frequently accompanying us on those mountain excursions or conversing with us beside the fountain in the courtyard. He and my mother would discourse for hours upon philosophy and science, while Esmeralda and I, despite our youth, sat nearby and took a profound interest in their conversations, which, though not fully comprehended by us, seemed, through some inexplicable inner intuition, strangely familiar. A child possesses greater understanding than we are accustomed to credit. Knowledge does not spring from the intellect alone. The pure, untainted heart dwells in proximity to spiritual wisdom and reflects its light. In addition to his professional duties, my father conducted what I then believed to be a school of medicine. We were never permitted to enter his laboratory on the second floor. Its sole door of heavy oak was secured by a peculiar and singular lock, and its windows were reinforced with iron bars. Every Wednesday evening, a number of gentlemen arrived and repaired with my parents to this chamber. I observed that their number was almost invariably 12, and they generally arrived and departed individually. During these Wednesday evening assemblies, my sister and I remained in the care of a tried and trusted servant, who ensured that we retired at the appointed hour. Thus matters continued for 11 years, until I had attained the age of 14 and my sister 11. Our lives were filled with love and benevolence, and each passing year served as a continuous yet delightful school. My mother was an exceptional linguist, and I, though only 14 years of age, had acquired proficiency in Spanish, French, English, and Italian, and had made considerable progress in the natural sciences, philosophy, and art. Esmeralda was in every respect my equal, but music was her particular forte. When her voice rose in song, crowds of peons would gather in the street, listening in silent awe to its flawless beauty. Both of us were accomplished performers upon various instruments. While she played the harp, I would accompany her upon the violin. These family concerts, in which our parents frequently joined, afforded them great pleasure, as did the remarkable resemblance we bore to them, I growing daily more like my father, while Esmeralda was the very image of her mother. One evening, my father returned earlier than was his custom. He and my mother seated themselves beside the fountain and were soon engaged in earnest conversation. My sister and I were playing with a large collection of fine seashells near the courtyard and, ordinarily, would have paid no more than passing heed to their discourse. However, the absence of my father's customary embrace and playful greeting, combined with the sorrowful expression upon his kind and handsome countenance, arrested our attention, and we ceased our play to listen. "Nina," he said, taking my mother's hands and gazing lovingly into her eyes, "do you realize that our 20 years are nearly at an end?" A momentary pallor overspread my mother's face, but it quickly gave way to an expression of solemn serenity as she answered, "Indeed, Ferda, I have not overlooked that circumstance. For some time past, I have been preparing myself for a transition which I presage is imminent, and I trust, my beloved husband, that you are doing likewise. Yet, my dear, you appear singularly sorrowful this evening. Does some distressing matter weigh upon your mind? So I pray you allow me to share it." With these words, she offered him a tender and affectionate caress. "Nina," he replied, imprinting a kiss upon her brow, "I have been reflecting that our life of conjugal devotion must soon draw to a close, yielding to a more solemn duty. And though I would not for an instant evade the task ordained for us, the knowledge of our impending separation fills me with an extraordinary melancholy." "You forget, dear husband," she rejoined, "that although we may appear to part, our souls remain eternally united. Our score of years of pure devotion and selfless labor have bound our inner natures inseparably together, developing our higher faculties until we are now prepared for an even more exalted endeavor. We love as only pure, selfless spirits are capable of loving. Yet we must not neglect our duty to those who, throughout these many years, have shielded us with their benevolent protection. Nor should we forget that all earthly things are transitory. Naught but the eternal endures. We have been instructed in the sacred science that leads to the everlasting, and for 20 years we have enjoyed the supreme happiness of this earth, serving to grant us a faint perception of an even higher, eternal beatitude. Shall we now, out of selfish considerations separate from the all, renounce our blessed privilege and neglect our loftier obligations?" My mother's countenance was radiant, a nimbus of light seeming to envelop her head, while her eyes shone with a wondrous, ethereal beauty. "My beloved wife," responded my father, "you represent the masters with noble grace. You do full justice to the exalted Vestas, and recall me to my duty. Indeed, how precarious is this earthly existence! Even when all appears radiant, a cloud may be impending. Today we abide in peace, happiness, and love. Tomorrow, death may lay waste our home, fortune may shift, and wealth give way to penury. Having pledged ourselves to the masters, we have truly been shielded by their protective love, and we must not now permit these ephemeral joys to divert us from the path of duty and the bliss that is everlasting." "Well spoken, my husband," she replied. "Now that we are both strengthened, what tidings does your countenance betray?" "I have this day received extraordinary tidings from France," he answered. "Santos has successfully passed his initiation and will arrive ere long to relieve me of my charge. He is to be accompanied by Alvarez. Though I comprehend not the full significance of this, we may be certain it portends change." "Indeed, husband, this is highly significant," my mother observed. "Yet let us not employ the word portend. It carries an intimation of misfortune, whereas we may rest assured that the presence of an individual so exalted can signify nothing but good. Nevertheless, if this be the case, the time has arrived to impart more advanced instruction to our children. Indeed, Father concurred, their acquired knowledge, combined with their intuitive faculties, will enable them to comprehend. I shall accompany you and them on an excursion across the mountain tomorrow, where we may speak with perfect freedom upon the subject we have so long guarded, yet which will be of paramount importance in their lives. Following this discourse, their conversation drifted into other channels. Presently, my sister and I, growing weary of our play, fetched our musical instruments, and all four of us joined in an evening concert. On the ensuing morning, provisions were prepared in anticipation of spending the entire day upon the mountain. The melancholy expression that had clouded my father's face the previous evening had vanished, and he participated in our rambles with spirited interest. Throughout the morning, our geological hammers resounded against the rocks, and we analyzed numerous flowers and botanical specimens. The mountain summit was strewn with ancient seashells, and my father availed himself of our inquiries regarding them to discourse upon the primeval world, an epoch when the current dry land formed the ocean bed, and the present seas cradled vast, mighty civilizations long since erased from historical record. After we had partaken of our midday repast, and once we were all seated upon the great porphyry rock that marked the summit, my father commenced the following discourse. "Children," he began, as mother seated herself between us, "the full significance of what I am about to impart will become clear as you mature, and since it is enveloped in considerable mystery, and comprises matters that cannot at present be fully elucidated, I must rely upon your innate understanding to render it plain. Your mother and I are members of a secret brotherhood, all of whose adherents are pledged to consecrate their lives to the service of humanity. Not only we, but our progenitors and ancestors for many generations before us, have been or remain identified with this mystical order." Esmeralda and I were by now listening with the utmost attention, and my father's words exerted a strange, compelling fascination over me. "This fraternity," he continued, "comprises numerous degrees or grades of membership, extending from those who labor selflessly in the humblest spheres of life, to those who embody the loftiest heights of human development. Each degree possesses its distinct duties and obligations, and your mother and I belong to that which is designated the fourth degree. As members of this rank, and before we may ascend to the exalted third degree, we must nurture, in pure love and through every path of virtue and rectitude, two souls to assume our positions in the world when we depart. You, beloved children, bear witness to the fulfillment of that sacred duty, and we trust and believe that you will prove entirely competent and willing to perform your part as you reach maturity. In addition to this obligation, we are required to lead a loving, selfless life for 20 years as ordinary members of society, during which period we are to instruct and train you until you are capable of proceeding independently. If these duties are faithfully discharged, if throughout these years we serve as a living exemplar of all that is pure and virtuous, it becomes our privilege to be admitted to the exalted third degree, to rise superior to the fetters of mortality, and to dwell immortally in the purest love. Children, our 20 years have now nearly run their course, and the sole remaining condition to be fulfilled is that you should be prepared to occupy our stations. We know, for our life of study has not been in vain, that this is merely a question of time, and that you both shall surpass us. We disclose these matters to you, dear children, because we have reason to believe that changes will soon summon us to new responsibilities, which may necessitate a sundering of our earthly ties of affection. In explanation of what may seem a cruel hardship, we must observe that while the love we have shared has been blissful, it cannot compare to the far loftier love that characterizes an elevated existence. And remember, children, that whatever may transpire, even if the bonds of love are severed and you appear friendless, you are, by right of birth and the adoption of the brotherhood, encompassed by protective powers that defy all opposition. So long as you lead a life of purity and rectitude, and adhere strictly to the path of duty, those great ones designated as the protectors will shield you from all harm. Grand and noble were my father's words as he expounded upon this subject, which seemed to possess his entire soul. Yet even more so were the exquisite and eloquent words of my mother, who followed him with a description of those sublime souls who had achieved the third degree. With absolute confidence, they delineated the possibilities that now lay before themselves and us, their offspring. And when they had concluded, Esmeralda and I, though youthful in years, were infused with an enthusiasm equal to their own. Now, children, my father said in conclusion, we have taken you into our complete confidence so that you may hereafter fully comprehend our actions. And while we impose no solemn vow upon you, you must preserve the secrecy of all we have spoken until you are permitted, by proper authority, to reveal it. My mother's depiction of the members of the Brotherhood, of their vast knowledge, extraordinary powers, and wondrous beauty, inspired in us a deep yearning to resemble them and to learn more of their relationship with our parents. As evening approached, we retraced our steps homeward, Esmeralda and I walking ahead, the mysterious brethren being the sole theme of our conversation. Nothing of an unusual nature transpired until the following Wednesday evening, the customary night for the assembly in the laboratory, gatherings which we now understood, through our father's discourse, to be those of a Masonic lodge wherein he held the office of Grand Preceptor. On this particular evening, father returned accompanied by a stranger. He was a tall, lithe, and agile figure, possessing somewhat long, curly brown hair, complemented by a thin, curled mustache and whiskers of an identical hue. His eyes, of a steel blue shade, were wide and exceedingly penetrating in their gaze. His features were pallid and somewhat angular in contour, whilst his form was almost entirely enveloped in a long, indigo-hued cloak that draped loosely from his shoulders to his knees. Upon his hands he wore gloves, which I observed he never removed. Furthermore, he spoke invariably in a low, hushed tone that seemed to possess some inexplicable power, sending a shiver through us whenever we heard it. I also observed that the stranger avoided physical contact with anyone. Immediately upon his arrival, he repaired to the laboratory, from which he never emerged even for meals, which were prepared specifically by mother and delivered by her in person. Upon the arrival of this guest, mother approached us to explain that she and father had an arduous task to perform that night, and that we must not be alarmed should they fail to descend until late the following day. Then, bidding us good night with a kiss, she retired to the laboratory, whilst father remained downstairs until his accustomed hour. At approximately 8 o'clock, the weekly visitors arrived, though on this occasion they came in a single body, led by yet another stranger. Esmeralda and I were then left in the company of Juanita, the maid, while father, accompanied by the others, proceeded to the laboratory. After I retired to my bed, the mysteries of the preceding days began to crowd upon my mind, and it was only after a long and restless evening that I finally drifted into slumber. Sleep, that profound and strange mystery, who can comprehend thy significance, or the wondrous powers that find full expression within thy domain. I fell asleep only to dream that I was transported far away to a wild, mountainous region, where, upon the steep and rocky slope of a lofty range surrounded by snow-capped peaks, stood a large edifice of monastic appearance. Presently, through the marvelous transformations characteristic of dreams, I found myself within an interior courtyard, surrounded by cyclopean columns and thronged with white-robed priests. At one end of the court, seated upon a chair of pearl or ivory atop a large white cube that served as a throne, sat a robed figure. His head was uncovered, adorned with long golden curls. His countenance was youthful, and his eyes were mild and blue. As I watched, a halo of light enveloped his form, and gazing more intently, I perceived that his body was transparent as crystal, with a golden light emanating through the light blue gauze robe that shrouded him. Then his features shifted. The kind and gentle expression that had initially graced his countenance became stern and awe-inspiring. A radiant light shone from his eyes, and violet scintillations filled the surrounding air. With eyes fixed in awe and wonder upon the spectacle, I beheld the white-robed throng recede, as 12 transparent figures, not golden like the first, but draped in yellow gauze, stepped forward to form a circle around the throne. It was then that I first noticed a golden zodiac inscribed upon the white marble floor encircling the throne, with each figure standing within a specific sign. The courtyard was flooded with a brilliant light from no discernible source, and lo, 12 figures clad in indigo led forward another figure similarly attired. A beautiful form of pearly whiteness shone through the transparent folds, and lo, as I gazed, I recognized my mother. Upon her broad and noble brow, now of an ivory pearl hue, shone a 5-pointed golden star of brilliant luster. How beautiful was her face! How serene and majestic her features! Her 12 robed conductors separated in front of her, 6 aligned on either side, joining behind to form a triangle around her person. She advanced. Then, a mist descended upon the scene, and I was lost in a deep, dreamless slumber. O soul, untrammeled by the shackles of matter, whither didst thou wander in this sleep? On the following morning, I learned from Juanita that, after remaining in session throughout the night, all had departed before dawn save for the mysterious stranger, who remained with father and mother in the laboratory. And whispered the maid, a frightened expression upon her face, the courtyard was filled with phantom spirits all night. For, as I set out to return to my chamber, the full moon illuminating the court revealed it to be filled with white figures. I offered no reply, yet I could not but correlate her strange assertion with my own dream, and I resolved to question mother regarding the matter. 9 o'clock arrived, and father descended, bearing a pale and careworn expression. Noon arrived. Father partook of a light midday meal with us, but in response to our inquiries, he merely replied, "Mother will descend later." 3 o'clock came, and at last mother appeared. How supremely beautiful was her countenance! Now of a pearly white hue and radiant with divine love, she approached us, and as she kissed me, her touch sent a thrill through my entire being. A delightful fullness possessed my heart. Never had I felt so happy. In response to our questions, she explained that the stranger was a great master, and that with his assistance she had traveled far and witnessed many of the mysteries of the higher life. When I related my dream to her, she smiled joyfully, and, kissing me, said, "My dear son and brother, you are wiser than you know, and you shall one day comprehend more fully the meaning of your vision." The stranger did not appear until evening, when he walked into the courtyard where we were all seated together. Approaching me, he uttered several strange words which produced a wondrous effect. A white mist materialized like a cloud before my eyes. The vapor, vibrating rapidly, assumed a distinct shape, and a panoramic view unfolded before me. I beheld a smooth, mirror-like expanse of water, encircled by mountainous hills and dotted with numerous islands. A bright blue sky, filled with drifting banks of snowy clouds, was reflected upon its placid surface. Presently, a vast fleet of vessels filled with armed men appeared, and the land itself grew dark with a surging mass of shielded warriors. By what means I knew not, but I seemed to recognize the scene, and the words Xerxes, Persia, Greece formed within my mind. Then the mist assumed new configurations, and I beheld a plain covered with hosts of dark-visaged, turbaned men bearing short, curved swords and mounted upon Arabian steeds. Opposing this swarthy host was an army of men of gigantic stature, possessing long, yellow hair, immense battle-axes, and suits of mail. I saw the turbaned hosts charge forward with loud cries. The opposing forces met in wild, tumultuous battle, and I perceived the words Martel, Poitiers. Then the mist dissipated, and I heard the strange man say, "Brother of yesterday and of tomorrow, your course is determined." Turning then to Esmeralda, he gazed upon her long and intently. As he did so, her features became immobile, and her eyes assumed a distant, far-away look, though I could perceive no mist. Then he uttered the words, "Child sister of the Orient in Western guise, thou too shalt return." He waved his hand, and my sister started, a look of astonishment upon her face as she turned inquiringly toward me. This singular occurrence had occupied but a few moments, and father and mother had remained silent witnesses throughout. As the stranger stepped back from Esmeralda, he turned and, with a peculiar gesture and a knowing look, took his departure. We both plied father and mother with questions, yet they had witnessed neither mists nor visions. They had only observed our steadfast gaze and heard the utterances of the stranger, whom they now declared to be a great adept named Albarez, possessing the most extraordinary powers, such as belong to all exalted souls, among which was the ability to temporarily recall to others their past existences. For, father explained, the soul is eternal and uncreated, passing from life to life, and from country to country. Undoubtedly, that which you beheld were scenes from your past existences. Should you join the brotherhood and progress through its more elevated courses, the vast repository of knowledge concealed within your soul from numerous bygone lives will be revealed, becoming an integral part of your consciousness. This, indeed, is the secret of the masters of whom we have so frequently spoken, and it lies within your power to emulate them, for they are merely men who have ascended to higher planes of existence. Yes, children, mother added, you are spiritual souls residing temporarily within physical vessels. Once you have purified, disciplined, and perfected your bodies, rendering them suitable instruments for the manifestation of the Spirit, it will bestow upon you all knowledge, for the Spirit is the cognizing power within humanity. Thus, you perceive the nature of my early tutelage. From my earliest youth, my life had been steeped in mystery, and by the tender age of 14, I had conceived ideals of perfect men known as masters, whom I ardently desired to emulate. If my life has diverged from that of most men, this context will serve to explain the divergence. These mystical teachings of my parents, coupled with my extraordinary encounter with Alvarez, rendered the brotherhood a constant subject of my contemplation. The presence of the adept, Alvarez, had evidently precipitated a change, for on the following Wednesday evening, no lodge meeting took place. In response to our inquiries, Father stated that his duty had been fulfilled, and his charge had been transferred to other hands. Chapter 2. Severed Ties. 2 weeks after the departure of the adept, Alvarez, Father entered the courtyard holding a letter, which he presented to Mother as he seated himself beside her near the fountain. Having broken the seal and read its contents, she passed the missive to Father, simultaneously summoning Esmeralda and me to the seat beside her. "Ferda," she said, as Father laid down the letter and we drew near, "this is all for the best, and we must display no sign of weakness." Turning then to us, she spoke, "Dear children, we have lived long and happily together, yet the moment has arrived when we must separate. Alfonso, Esmeralda, and I must depart on the first steamer bound for Paris. I have been summoned thither to perform a duty, and I shall take Esmeralda with me so that she may complete her studies. You have yet much to learn that Father is best equipped to teach you. Once you have advanced sufficiently to be prepared for instruction higher than he can impart, you too shall come to Paris, and we shall be reunited. Now, children, we shall hold our family concert for the final time, as I understand the Altada departs from Vera Cruz the day after tomorrow, and your sister and I must board that vessel." Father acquiesced to all that Mother proposed, and I, possessing absolute confidence in the superior wisdom of my parents, resolved to accept whatever circumstances arose. Nevertheless, it was not without a sense of melancholy that Esmeralda and I went to retrieve our instruments, tenderly embracing one another along the way. "What Mother says is for the best, brother," my sister said, "and whilst you are learning to be a great physician, I shall become a great artist. Then we shall meet again in Paris, our joy redoubled by this separation. Indeed, were we always to remain together, we should never comprehend the darkness born of absence, and undoubtedly, after a period of separation, our affection will be even deeper when we are reunited. Observe, too, how deeply Father and Mother love one another, yet they bear this trial with perfect composure. We must likewise emulate them, remaining strong and courageous, and in due course we shall become members of the great brotherhood. Do you know, brother, I believe Mother's sudden summons to Paris is connected to this great brotherhood of which they have so frequently spoken? What are your thoughts, sister?" I inquired. "Why, I believe Mother is highly advanced, far greater than we perceive or realize. In truth, I suspect neither of us fully comprehends our parents. I believe them both to be prominent members of the order. And, brother, I suspect that during his sojourn here, the great adept, Alvarez, discerned Mother's advanced state, and has now summoned her. At all events, we shall correspond frequently. You shall inform me of all concerning Father, and I shall share everything regarding Mother." By then, we had returned to Father and Mother in the courtyard, and once we commenced, we continued our concert until late into the night. Father and I played our violins, while my sister and Mother performed upon the harp and flute. Abrupt though the announcement had been, there was no hesitation. Father and Mother, managing all affairs in a calm and systematic manner, were prepared for departure by the following day. We journeyed together by train to Veracruz, where mother and my sister boarded the Altada, bound for New York on their way to France. Father had suppressed his emotions throughout, yet I observed tears welling in his eyes and heard his stifled sobs as he kissed his beloved wife and daughter farewell. I clung to the necks of my dear mother and sister until the order to disembark was given. Then, alongside Father, I bade them a sorrowful farewell and descended into the tender to be rowed ashore. Mother appeared to be possessed of a marvelous composure, a fact that undoubtedly sustained Father's fortitude. This arose not from any lack of affection on her part, but from her supreme mastery over her feelings and emotions. It is only now, after many years of toil, labor, and experience, that I begin to comprehend the exalted nature of my mother. It is only now, understanding the full import of that parting, that I can truly appreciate my father's strength of character. Truly, their devotion to duty was profound, that they should sacrifice a life of domestic bliss to labor for the welfare of humanity. Father and I were rowed back to the landing, where we stood watching the black hull of the Altada as it dwindled upon the waters of the Gulf. A long plume of dark smoke rose from the steamer's funnel, drifting across a clear, blue sky that offered no portent of an impending storm. Birds chirped amongst the trees, and the air was filled with the industrious hum of insect life. The vibrant, multi-hued flora, glistening with morning dew, transformed the surrounding landscape into a realm of beauty, as though nature in its joy sought to assuage our grief. That day we took up residence at the hacienda of Don Ignatius Martinez, an eminent scholar and physician of the city, who was a fellow student of the occult and a close friend of my father. Upon learning of the departure of my mother and sister, he shook his head gravely and remarked, "Señor Colono, I wish not to cause you any unnecessary apprehension or disquiet, yet you must surely have neglected to consult your astrological charts prior to this undertaking." "In truth, Don Ignatius," replied my father, "I have not observed the planetary aspects for several days, though I never disregard such knowledge in my practice. Indeed, I deem the forces and substances symbolized by the planets to be intimately linked with human ailment. In accordance with Hippocrates, I maintain that astrology, in its true sense, constitutes the very foundation of therapeutics. But tell me, Don Ignatius, what are the current indications?" In response, Don Ignatius escorted us to his study, where he drew our attention to a large celestial globe fashioned from a transparent material. Upon its surface, the constellations were painted in vivid hues, while within, and capable of various adjustments, lay a model of our solar system with the sun at its center. "You will observe," remarked the Don, "that the planets portend a tempest. Upon the water, Saturn and Uranus, both malevolent bodies, stand in conjunction, while the Moon, Venus, and Mars occupy the same zodiacal sign, the very sign that governs the Gulf. This is highly inauspicious, and though I trust no harm shall befall them, I foretell a disruption ere long." Father evidently comprehended the remarks of Don Ignatius entirely and concurred with his conclusions. Yet, in reply, he merely stated that he had obeyed his instructions and could only hope for the most favorable outcome. I had listened attentively, and although I myself placed some faith in astrology, as I gazed up at the cloudless blue sky, I concluded that their wisdom on this occasion must surely be mistaken. Yet my conclusions were swiftly proven erroneous. A mere few hours later, with almost inconceivable rapidity, the sky became shrouded in dark, ominous clouds. A tempestuous wind arose, and the obscurity of night usurped the brilliance of day. There followed a brief gust of wind, a gentle shower of rain, and then a stillness, a dreadful, oppressive calm that hung heavily in its absolute silence. Then erupted a tempest, a storm of terrible magnitude. The wind roared violently, and the trees snapped before its formidable force. Even the timber framing of the edifice shrieked and trembled beneath the relentless blasts. The heavens appeared as a vast inferno of fire, whilst the thunderclaps contested with the howling winds in a terrifying and deafening din. Within an hour all had subsided. It was but a single hour, yet, O heavens, what utter devastation it had wrought, what violence it had inflicted, what profound changes it had brought to pass. Throughout the tempest, my father had sat with a stern, distant gaze, and now that the storm had abated, I observed that a notable transformation had come over his features. Gone was the joyful smile of former days, replaced instead by a solemn and inexpressible melancholy. "My dear brother," said the dawn, taking my father's hand, "I share in your grief, and would offer whatever strength I might command in this hour of uncertainty and trial. It appears nigh impossible that the steamer could have survived such a tempest, yet we must believe that all transpires for the best. We cannot mourn that which the world terms death, for we know that for her, it represents but the commencement of a new existence. Though you have lost her presence in this mortal realm, your bereavement is her eternal gain. Furthermore, when we contemplate the truth of the matter, it is ultimately your gain as well. Though she is lost to the visible world, she shall remain perpetually present in the invisible, and what appears to be separation is, in truth, an even closer union. Remember also, brother, that you acted in strict accordance with the Master's instructions, and their wisdom far exceeds our own. Viewing the situation in this light, we must recognize that had she still possessed duties to fulfill within this world of form, she would have been shielded by those forces against which not even this fierce tempest could prevail. The words of Don Ignatius possessed a fortifying power, and my father clasped his hand, responding, "My dear brother, you speak profound truths. I have loved my wife to the point of selfishness, and this trial has undoubtedly been sent to recall me to my duty and to redirect my affection toward humanity. I shall remain steadfast and never again neglect my true labor as a man. I obeyed the Master's commands. I place absolute confidence in their superior wisdom, and henceforth, I dedicate my life to the service of humanity and truth." As my father spoke, he arose, the very embodiment of self-control, and his pale, sorrowful countenance became illuminated by a noble tranquility. "My son, Alfonso," he said, turning toward me, "remember the words that have been spoken here. Engrave them deeply upon your mind and heart. Your mother is not dead. Indeed, there is no death. Through that process so designated, we merely transition from the prison-like forms of flesh into the universal light and love. In all probability, your beloved mother and sister have departed from this mortal sphere to ascend to higher planes of joy and labor. It remains for us to persevere in our endeavors here, thereby earning the right to join them in that sublime brotherhood of love. Will you accompany me in this monumental endeavor? Will you unite with me in striving toward this ultimate end?" I felt as though I were absorbing my father's strength. A new vitality pulsated through my veins, and an inner voice urged, "Onward, onward," with a determination and enthusiasm I had never previously displayed. I answered, "Yes." My father embraced and kissed me, while Don Ignatius, grasping my hand, said, "You are a noble son, destined for a great work. You shall acquire immense wisdom and ultimately transcend this realm. Accompany your father and study diligently, for he is preeminently qualified to instruct you. Remain pure, virtuous, and filled with benevolence toward mankind, and your destiny shall be assured." We remained in the company of Don Ignatius for one more day. The journals detailing the tempest reported that it had swept the entire coast and gulf, rendering the loss of all vessels then at sea a certainty. Below this was a register of the passengers aboard the Altada. Following the names of Signorinina Colonna and her daughter, mention was made of 2 unidentified men who had embarked just as the vessel was weighing anchor, and whose names had not yet been recorded. On the following day, my father and I returned to the city, and from that moment onward, I became his near constant companion. The long-dormant laboratory was reopened, and I was guided through a rigorous course in chemistry, while every subject pertaining to the medical arts became an object of our systematic investigation. My father became more assiduous than ever in his ministrations to the sick, and I accompanied him on all his rounds, listening attentively to his discourses as we traveled. As time elapsed and my understanding deepened, he began to speak with less reserve. Binding me to strict secrecy, he disclosed to me much concerning the occult theories of medicine. The doctrines of signatures and correspondences were comprehensively outlined, and he related to me in greater detail the nature of his education in Paris. Our mother and sister were by no means banished from our thoughts or conversations. We spoke of them frequently, and though we did so with sadness, we governed our emotions and refrained from wasting precious time in futile longings for what had passed. Speaking one day of his medical achievements, my father remarked, "I do not treat illness in the manner commonly supposed, nor does my success derive from the titles appended to my name, nor from the diploma I hold from one of the world's most illustrious institutions. Rather, it stems from the knowledge I acquired within certain secret schools wherein I was a disciple during my time in Paris. These academies," he continued, "have existed beyond the knowledge of the general public since the era of Mesmer and Saint-Germain, both of whom imparted far more wisdom than the uninitiated public credits them with. These institutions are rigorously guarded, and none save the worthy may gain admittance, for the knowledge they unveil would constitute a formidable power for evil in the hands of selfish or malicious individuals. I hope, my son, to secure your admission into this school once you come of age, as none are permitted to enter prior to reaching their 21st year. In the interim, you must graduate as a conventional physician, for in this age of superficial knowledge and rigid formalism, you could not practice openly according to the precepts taught therein. Consequently, you must cloak your practice under the guise of an orthodox practitioner, even as I do. Many indeed are the cures I have effected under this title, while simultaneously employing methods which, were they disclosed, would be branded as superstitious and cause me to be denounced as a charlatan. When I inquired whether this secret school was in any way affiliated with the Great Brotherhood, he replied that it constituted a portion of a semi-esoteric section, and that all members of the 4th degree sent their offspring thither to receive the benefits of both the esoteric and exoteric systems. "Remember, my son," he said, "the members of the 4th degree must seek power and influence within the world, not for their own selfish ends, but so that they may become more potent instruments for the common good. Each candidate for membership must attain mastery of the three great disciplines: medicine, law, and art. This shall be more fully elucidated when the appropriate time arrives. Was mother and are women in general admitted to this school? I inquired. Your mother was indeed a member, and women are certainly admitted, he answered. However, whilst they are exempt from professional practice should they so choose, they must undergo the same rigorous examinations as the men. Your mother was an advanced graduate in art and music. She was highly skilled in the compounding of pharmacology and the diagnosis of disease, and she served as my constant advisor in all perplexing cases. Simultaneously, she was well versed in the laws of nations and the principles of governance, and when considering jurisprudence in its philosophical aspect, she possessed few equals. Remember also, Alfonso, that it was there I first met your mother, and as an explanation for our remarkably harmonious natures, I should disclose that all fourth-degree members of the Brotherhood send a son and a daughter to this institution, a practice our predecessors maintained for many centuries past, wheresoever their academies might be established. The comprehension of the laws of generation imparted within this academy enables all its initiates to introduce suitable members into their respective households, each father and mother rearing a son and a daughter. In this manner, the order is perpetuated as the elder members ascend to more exalted degrees wherein marriage is unknown. There resided with me in Paris an only sister who had wedded a fellow brother, and of whom I have received no tidings for 2 decades. Similarly, my mother had a brother who chose celibacy, pursuing an exceptional course before passing from this life. Regarding this matter, I can say no more, yet I harbor the hope that when you journey to Paris, you will, like me, discover a soul clothed in the feminine sex who will prove responsive to your own and entirely worthy of your devotion. But, I said, thinking of my lost sister, how are the vacancies filled when deaths occur? That, my son, belongs to the secrets of initiation, which I am not at liberty to disclose. Suffice it to say, there are councils that regulate these matters. And aside from those who are entitled to become members by right of birth, there are those who achieve membership through adoption. 7 years thus passed, during which I remained a constant student under my father's tutelage. No tidings had ever been received of the Altata since the day of that fateful storm. Not a single word reached us concerning my mother. Whenever I broached the subject with my father, he persisted in asserting that she still lived, going so far as to explain that she had been initiated into the 3rd degree, whose members transcend death and live immortally. But if this indeed be true, I urged, why do we receive no communication from her? My son, you do not understand, he solemnly replied. Those of the 3rd degree know nothing of the ties of husband, wife, or parent. No individual, as such, can claim their love, for it is boundless and universal, belonging to the whole of mankind. I had now attained the age of 21 and was far advanced in the study of medicine and science. My desire for knowledge had become well nigh insatiable. Yet, notwithstanding my intense application to my studies, I had not been permitted to neglect the requirements of social life. For, said my father, so long as your sphere of labor lies within the social world, you must remain acquainted with its forms and usages. Nor is it necessary to sever your relations with your fellow men in order to pursue your studies, but only to eschew that barren farce, society devoid of intellect, wherein vanity, frivolity, and fashion have shriveled the heart, and outward forms conceal the defects of the soul. This participation in the social world yielded beneficial results. I began to analyze its so-called pleasures, only to find them entirely illusory and unsatisfying. While participating in them as a matter of form, the pursuit of knowledge and a desire to solve, at least to some extent, the mysteries of the universe became my sole ambition. One day we returned home to find a visitor whom, at first sight, judging by his attire, I mistook for Alvarez, whom I Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.